Hold on, I'm sorry. I'm Jen O'Callahan, and I work with the First Legal Media Group. I don't know why I just looked at that to remember who I am, but I'm the Community Engagement Manager. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome.
So we just want to preface this with, it's Wednesday, we've all been here since Monday, trying to get ready for all of you to be here. So we're a little punch drunk, but we're super excited because you all got here today, and we've been waiting pretty much like a year for this to happen. So, in FRC, at least, you know, when Stronghold was thought about, and we thought, like, what is this season going to be like? We couldn't wait for championship to see it played on the top level. So, for those of you in FRC, we are, you know, we're just like super excited to just get the robots on the field and see what happens. So, please forgive us if we're laughing a lot and sound crazy, because we really just are excited and really are kind of crazy. So.
You might be just a little bit crazy.
I'm pretty sure that's required to be part of first.
Yeah. So the great thing, that's a perfect example. The great thing about social media is, or you have something you want to add, just kind of say it, and if we hear something awesome, or you repeat it, and if we don't hear you and you really want it to get said, like, maybe raise your hand, but don't do that too much, because we're like definitely not in a classroom. But just so you know a little bit of background about Jen and I run the social media campaign for the first robotics competition, which means that I post all of the Facebook posts. That little RSS feed is our blog, so I write Frank's blog. I post Frank's blog. Actually, Frank, anything that actually says written by Frank Merrick is genuinely written by Frank. He's very, very dedicated to his blog. Anything else that says written by someone is usually written by me as a first draft, and then we get it to the people and kind of they give our blessing to publish it. And I also run the FRC team's Twitter account. So give you an idea that when you're like reading and liking and seeing stuff on that, it's actually me that posts it. So now you can put a picture to your imagination. And Jen,
We have a little hand signal so we can remind each other to throw back and forth. I really wish we were recording this for So I work with Bridget Cox, who's hiding in the corner over here. We're both sort of the chief tweet people for the Twitter account for First Lego League, so we've been very busy today. If you're not following us, I highly recommend, especially if you like cheesy jokes, because we're very funny. We also have the First Lego League blog, and we do have a YouTube channel. It's not quite as active currently as we would like it to be, but you'll start to see over the next several months. We've been working on some content for that, so you're going to start seeing a lot more activity on that channel as well if you follow us.
So the thing about social media, and the thing that we really want to make a point of today, is that we are both part of the social media team at first. Bridget is also part of that team, and then Haley, our marketing person, and Beth from Volunteer Resources, Marissa from FTC, and Michelle from the alumni program. And the one thing that we want to point out is that we are going to focus on the beginning of getting involved in social media today. So if you have a really active campaign and you're doing like super awesome stuff, thank you, that's awesome. But we're probably not going to be able to help you with too much today. We really want to talk about why would you get involved, how to get involved the most effective way, and basically how can you use the math and the analytics at the end to actually increase your campaign in a way that works. So why should you get involved in social media? Hopefully, you might be surprised how much I get asked that question on a pretty regular basis from the adults and mentors from teams in FRC at least. And the question that they get the most often is like, why would we get involved, and how do you protect your message without somebody always carefully looking at the content? And the answer there is that and that's what we're going to go over today, is that you need to get involved, first of all, and you really have to put the time in to make sure that the content is appropriate. So there's really no way around it. You have to do it, and you have to do it and be really careful about it. Because one of the things that one of the things that we focus on a lot is how do we develop content, or how do we work with content that is going to be appropriate for our mission, always go back to our mission, and works with our audiences the way that we're looking to do that. So I do have a little bit of data because I think it's important to share. And in the US, for those of you who are wondering, Instagram is the fastest growing social media network with over 400 million users right now. So for those of you who don't have an Instagram account, or your teams that don't have an Instagram account, it's really, that's a place that's growing really quickly. And you'll notice that when Jen and I both talked about the what we run, neither of us have an Instagram account. First in general, yeah, the First in general has one, but if you follow the First Instagram account, you'll probably see that it's not as active as our Facebook and Twitter. And we have, so one of the things we're going to talk about is bandwidth with social media, and we are right now don't have the bandwidth to run a great Instagram account, so we don't go there. In the worldwide, there's 2.3 billion active social users, which is still only 31% of the world's population. So there's so much room to grow in social media users, and that's what's, obviously those things are going to balloon in the next year if we look at how to impact the community in the worldwide. There's been a 10% increase in the number of social users just since last January. It's like, that number is insane. So everybody is on board, everybody's getting using it, and then 1.9 billion of those 2.3 billion are using it on their mobile device. So another thing that you want to think about is how do you make your mobile device work for you? And that's really, like, if you saw, all of us, both of us were up here, and we're on our phones all the time at our events, and when we're not at events, to try to make our mobile work for us in a way that's good. And you also want to think about how's the picture going to show up on somebody's mobile device as opposed to their computer, because no one's really, not no one, very little people are using their social media on a computer.
So I'm just curious, honestly, out of the folks who are here in chairs on the floor, we were not expecting quite a crowd. How many of you are already running social media? Yeah, exactly, and that's exactly why it's so important for us from First, because this is how people are getting the information. I'm not sure if you're asking a question or you just forgot to put your hand down. Okay, awesome, thanks. So that's exactly why we find it so important to communicate, because who is regularly checking their email versus checking their, it's a much smaller number of people in the room. So the beauty of social media is it's convenient, you can access it from your phone, it's really quick information. Sometimes that can be a downfall. Today I'm sure we've probably lost some users from the number of tweets that we've been sending out, but hopefully we're also giving a flavor of the event as well. The other great thing about communicating with people on social media is the interactions can happen so quickly. You're not sitting around and waiting for a letter to come in the mail, which just seems even silly to say now. Nobody does that anymore, and that's a big deal when you get a letter. And the other fantastic thing about using social media as a main source of communication is that people will start to see you as like that one-stop shop for information about what you're doing. And
that's the one thing that you want to remember, is that if somebody is in the world and they hear about your team, maybe they see you on the news or see you in the newspaper, the first place they're going to go is your social media account. They're going to go to Facebook, they're going to go to Twitter, they're going to try to find you on a website perhaps. And if you, so there's, that's like a double-edged sword. If you don't have that information, where are they going to go to find it? But if you do have that information, is it up to date? Is it valuable? Is it reflecting your brand of who you want to be? Are you sending the message to the community that you want to send? So people see your Twitter and your Facebook feeds as the one-stop shop to find out about your team. So you always want to make sure that those things are up to date. Did you win an award recently? Do you make sure your cover photo is up to date? Are you talking about the current season? I just saw someone today on Twitter. I was looking them up because I wanted to know who they were, and they had the wrong title because I know what their real title is. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, that's like it's like their public business card and their title isn't right. So you want to make sure that those things, which is a really simple idea, but those things are up to date, especially for the mentors who might be managing the overall account and allowing students to post on a regular basis. Those are the things that you want to look at.
And leveraging your social accounts is also a great way to make sure that people who have no idea what First is learns about First, because probably more for your parents, which is why there's so many Instagram users rising. Everybody's got a Facebook account these days, so if you're sharing information on Facebook and friends of yours like it or share it, you're going to start to bring in a much larger audience than you would normally have. Instagram and Twitter are the same exact thing. If you don't have a closed account and you're sharing information, you never know who's going to eventually get that end of that ripple effect of what you're putting out there.
So we really want to talk about how can you make it work for yourself. So we have come up with some things that this is how we make it work for FRC and for FLL and for our social media group, and so we wanted to share that with you. So we're going to quickly go through these and then sort of look at each of them individually. But the first one is to know your audience. And for most of you, you probably have the same kind of thought process that we have when it comes to knowing your audience. We'll get to that in a second. You want to create a unified strategy so that when you think about the question that comes up a lot, as I was saying, is how do we control our social media without making it a flat experience? And that's really where your unified strategy can come in. So the questions that you can answer, is it fit our mission? And we'll talk about more of them. So that when you have students who are posting, you can say, here's our questions. If the answer is yes, you're good. We're going to post it. If you think the answer might be no, then we want to try to think through like what might be missing. Super important to watch the trends. If you missed the day that the one hashtag was really popular and you could have gotten involved, it's a big bummer. So make sure that you're paying attention to the trends. The most important thing is creating your own content, because just retweeting or finding other articles, that's a great way to help boost your social media because it connects you across the community, but you've got to create your own content. Keep it simple though, because people are going to go nuts with this content creation thing, and you'll be all day long just trying to make cool stuff to post, and like the meme creation is like a sinkhole of time. Believe me, we all know because we do it all the time. Like, oh, we got to make a meme for this, and then it's 2 days later. But keep it simple, but you got to spend the time. So you got to commit to yourself and commit to your team that the social media is going to be important.
So you probably, if you have an account, and obviously most of you raised your hand, so the first thing, you probably have an audience already, and if you think about who the audience that you have to begin with, probably very likely you're starting off with team members, you're starting off with volunteers, you're talking to supporters, but we're not necessarily ignoring those folks, but we also want you to think about who you want your audience to be, because that can make a really big difference in how you approach your content creation. And honestly, this is probably a little more direct, but ultimately, a great advantage of having a really robust social media campaign is you're probably going to attract some supporters of the financial sort. And I don't know, from a show of hands, is there anybody who wouldn't like more financial support?
Yeah, anybody on social media just for the fun and not for the money? We want to. Yeah, so the team accounts, you want to be thinking, who would you like your audience to be? The answer hopefully should be, we would like some big supporters to find us on social media and either get involved in our campaigns or help us build our program to be more robust. And that's really where you want to work toward. And that's something that we think about all the time, is how can we develop our accounts so that it reflects who we are enough so that the people that we want to get involved and support us will jump on board. And a lot of that has to do with understanding who they are, what they're looking for, what are they asking of you once they do get involved. For example, are they asking you to tweet their own material? Are they asking you to tag them when you're talking about what's going on when you win an award? How do you tag them appropriately? Is that a part of your, what we call like supplier opportunities or sponsor opportunities? And for those of you that are on your business teams, thinking about who would you like it to be, wrapping those opportunities of social media into the opportunities as a sponsor can be huge for some sponsors. That means that every time you're tweeting, or once a week or once a day or whatever, you're working on recognizing your sponsors in that way. And that's for those of you that, like, you all have levels, like your gold sponsors get this, and your silver sponsors get this, and your whatever sponsors. That can be a way to help develop those levels, is by using social media as a payback.
It is obviously all about balance, though, too. You don't want your feeds to just be entirely, we'd like to thank sponsor XYZ for the awesome contribution that you made, because you're going to lose everybody else in the process, and you're probably also, honestly, going to lose some of those big supporters, because why they came to you in the first place is your common mission, your common goals, and the great content you're producing.
So the next part of this is your unified strategy. So what is your message? And the most important part of that is, what's your mission? So for many of us, our missions are probably the same. When you go and look at the first mission, most of us probably have the same mission or close to it as the first mission. But you want to make sure that when you're thinking about developing content with your students, what is our unified strategy is going to be based around, one thing is based around our mission. So make sure that your team and your members understand what that is. And how do you look at content and say, does that reflect our mission? Because sometimes for students, that might be a hard thing to understand. Sometimes for me, that's a hard thing to understand. So when I'm out in the field and I'm like, this tweet, is this really what we're looking for? I have to ask myself, would this make sense? Does this connect back to our mission? So you want to make sure that that is a conversation that you have with your students. What does that even mean? I think we have a question. Yeah.
For a younger team that may not have as many opportunities to go out and spread their mission within the community, how would you suggest then the unified strategy to be expressed?
Well, so you still should have something like your own team should still have it. If your team doesn't have a mission, I would strongly recommend that the summer project is that you write one. That for a number, especially in FRC, a number of the awards, submission awards, connect back to a mission. So you should write one so that you have a base to build yourself through to become a more veteran team. So that's number one. You should write one. If you need some inspiration, I would say look at the first mission. But there are great teams out there with missions that you can look at. So you should write one if you don't have one. And make sure that that is, so that's a good starting place, because writing one, then you can talk about, okay, so we have, once you have your mission, you can say those, then you should have bullet points that you pull out to be like, okay, so these are the action items that connect back to our mission. And then you can pull your social media content from those action items. So that's kind of a lofty explanation of the process, but that's the basic idea of how it works.
It's a great guidepost to really get started, because often once you define the mission, part of it is, the key is really being concise. You don't want a mission that's 11 pages long, because you'll never make it clear to your audience what that mission really is if you're constantly adding and then. That'll also give you a good guidepost for sharing other people's content, as well as your own, and thinking about how your post is going to connect to that mission. So I think you can, if you start with a good, solid, concise mission, then everything else is going to build from that point.
Right. And so as an FRC team, you also, and part of the strategy is you want to look at your season and try to think about how can you ebb and flow with what the message is that's coming from your team. Because like this week, for example, the messages that are coming out of FRC teams are significantly different than what they're going to be a month from now. Because I don't have like this awesome championship experience to get great content from. So our process and what we post is going to be significantly different. Also, you guys are going to be bored with championship stuff a month from now, right? You'll be like, later, done that, I've moved on to the next phase of my life. That doesn't include First Stronghold. So you really want to think about another part of your unified strategy after you're connecting to a mission is to look at your timeline and how can you build around your year or if it's not a year, your 6 months, or your build season, or whatever kind of short timeline your team operates under, and how can you use what's happening in that time as a part of what you should be posting. So, for example, for FRC during build season, there's going to be tons of robot pictures and design ideas, and we're excited and all that. In the event season, there's probably not going to be much talk about design processes because you're going to be so excited about being at events or fundraising. And then in October, none of that stuff's going on because you're probably focusing on more of your team development and award writing. So you really want to think about how do you make your strategy work for you in a timeline process so that you know what to focus on in the moment. Because that's part of that strategy is to understand the timeline process.
So another thing that I would recommend while you're thinking about these timelines and how you're connecting to your mission is you don't want everything to become so data-driven and dry that you lose some of the people who really haven't heard about first and are not as familiar. Those folks are going to want more personal stories that they can connect to. And that's honestly, you'll see, especially on our Twitter account, sometimes we just do really silly posts. Because we want to show that this is a fun organization to be involved in. Our teams have fun, our volunteers have fun, our coaches and mentors have fun. That really differentiates first from other types of STEM-focused programs out there. And we want to make sure that that fun comes through. We also want to make sure that some of that impact comes through. You can look at a bunch of charts of percentages and it probably means something to a certain segment of personality types, but most people are going to connect a lot more to that personal story of a team that was personally affected by their participation in a first robotics competition season or had their first meeting with a first LEGO League team and saw an instant change in one of their students. It's the stuff that tearjerker and moments and the pieces that just kind of make you get all verklempt, for lack of a better word.
Like this morning, for those of you who, if you were at the Hall of Fame induction ceremony, there was a moment when 597 walked up to the Hall of Fame and they saw the banner that said 597 for the first time. Like that, every single kid on the team had the exact same look on their face. It was unbelievable. And I happened to have my camera out and I happened to take a picture. But those are the moments that you have to meld into your timeline organization so that you can create those personal stories that people can connect to.
Because not everybody from the outside world is going to really understand what all the work and the dedication means, but that's where using photos can also be a great way to convey a story. You're going to recognize a moment where someone's just absolutely heartbroken that their robot didn't move when it was supposed to, or that moment when they realize how well they did, and you can see in their whole face and body, and that's where you get those personal moments and you really pull people in a different way.
So the next question that you should ask yourself, though, as part of the strategy is what makes you separate from everybody else? Because there are thousands of Twitter accounts, and all of us are sort of tweeting and making the same material, but what is it that makes you unique? And how can you tell that story to the people that you want to learn from, or that you would like to gain as followers, the audience that you would like to understand and be part of?
And you've obviously already done a lot of that work to identify yourselves. You all have team names, you all have team identities you've built in, so you already have that starting point. It doesn't have to be this giant weight on your shoulders.
And then you want to look at how can you differentiate your content enough to keep people excited, which we sort of already touched on here.
Yeah, I think one of the worst things in the world, and a lot of organizations are guilty of this, is when you see, oh, they have a Facebook account and an I don't know why I'm talking like this, I'm sorry. It's been a long day. Silly voices are coming out. They have a Facebook account and an Instagram account, and they're running a Snapchat, and everything is the exact same content. And it isn't even rewritten or repurposed. And what's the point of having all those accounts if you're not thinking about how those social media programs work and what's really appropriate and best suited for?
Yeah, so anybody a Patriots fan? We're from New England, so we are. Yeah. So if any of you follow their social media campaign is amazing. So if you want to get some good inspiration, like I would highly recommend that you go look at the Patriots, both Facebook and Twitter page.
We are not all Patriots.
Yeah. But they have a great social media campaign. But the reason that they're really successful is because they differentiate their content across their pages. So on their Facebook page, when something happens in a game, it's usually like, Tom Brady threw a touchdown to Rob Gronkowski on the 7-yard line and blah, 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 blah. And then on Twitter, though, it's just like, Gronk. So think about the conversation that you could be having with, So if you're from New England, you know what I'm talking about. So think about that as a way to differentiate your information across contents. Twitter is a little bit more conversational. It's obviously shorter, and people are, scrolling a little faster, whereas Facebook can be a little bit more content rich.
And it doesn't mean you can never, take a great tweet and share it on Facebook for people to see, or take a segment of your blog and pull it out on an Instagram pretty background. I told you the voices are starting to come out, sorry about that. But you just want to be judicious about it, because if it's constantly just the same thing, recycled, you're going to lose people and you won't get them back. So you do want to make sure that you're aware of the trends. We talked about this a little bit before. You don't want to be that person that's composing the hashtag like a girl 6 years after that was a trending topic. There's a chance you can resuscitate things that are gone and past, but it's probably not the best way to spend your time. But if you're able to jump on relevant trends, and I think that's an important differentiating factor. You don't want to jump on every single trend just because it's trending if it doesn't make sense for who you are and who your audience is. But if you're able to connect with those, your engagement for a larger group is probably going to grow, because people who are tapped into those trends, who don't necessarily know about you, are going to see content from you.
Yeah, who remembers when the boy from the Texas school made that clock? Right? Crazy, trending on Twitter in an hour. So we run our social media campaigns, we see this start to trend, and we're like, what is it? We want to say, should we get involved? Do we, and what's the message? Because those people that are involved in that trend are probably people that are interested in STEM, which means that they're probably interested in all of you. So that's a great way to connect with people that don't know anything about FIRST or anything about your programs. So you really want to think about as a way to look at those things to say, hey, that's probably a STEM-related organization. So if I jump on that and somebody, even if it's only 10 people or 15 people out of the 3 billion that are making that Twitter hashtag trend, that's a big deal. And that could be a big breakthrough for you in your own community.
And also, most of these, if not all of them, I'm not actually aware of a platform that doesn't have some kind of analytics tool available for you to look at. I know, yay, data! But if you can start noticing, when your content gets the most engagement, you can start to work your calendars around, what time people are looking at Facebook, what time people are checking Twitter, and save your real home run stuff to make sure that the most eyes are getting on it. So there is a great vast landscape. It sounds like the beginning of it. I'm sorry. I told you I was a little. There are many tools out there that can allow you to schedule your posts, and there's some really wonderful benefits of that, especially if you're going away and you want to make sure that your content doesn't turn into a vast wasteland. But there's also a wonderful benefit of live tweeting, live posting, live sharing, especially when you've got an event like first championship going on, because there's constantly something going on, there's constantly something to catch. And I think once again, you want to think about a balance. You don't really want your feeds to go dry if your head of social media takes a vacation, but you also have to make sure that other people have the password in case something goes crazy. You don't want a planned, scheduled tweak to make you look awkward, which happens a lot in the world.
And then you want to think about the big times of the year like this week. What kind of content could you be developing now that you could use later? So you don't want to just use all of the awesome stuff this week. So for example, back at headquarters before we left, if you can imagine the amount of stuff that FRC had to bring to this building to put on this show, it's a little bit probably unthinkable. And so this, walking down the warehouse of all of the road cases that has to come to this building is a great shot. But I don't want to use that right now because maybe that shot would be useful in a couple of months to help us remember how awesome, like on a Throwback Thursday, how awesome championship was. So try to think about when you're in the moments of these awesome experiences, how can you live tweet, show cool shots, but save some of those for when it's a little slower and you may not have the content available to you in such a ready way.
Whether you choose to plan your posts and schedule them or live post, I just wanted to take a moment to, if you're not aware of stuff like this that happens, this is a perfect example of the danger of, first of all, not being aware of a hashtag and jumping into a conversation without really knowing. And it's not robotics. I personally checked to make sure I found something that was a pretty bad example. I'm sure some of you remember there was a shooting in a movie theater a few years ago, and hashtag Aurora came out in the response. And unfortunately, this organization didn't really realize what was happening, and they jumped into a conversation talking about a dress, which you don't want to be that person that is caught so unaware of what's going on, either on your scheduled tweets or on your live tweets, your live Facebook posts, your scheduled Facebook posts. Pick a media platform. You don't want to be that person because people do not forget this. And
Yeah, ever.
yeah. Okay. So on that happy note, I'm sorry I totally brought the room down with that.
Thanks, Jenny.
I know, happy times. But the nice thing about having a calendar is you can be aware of some of the events that are coming up and jump in on that. So we recently did a whole series of content based on Volunteer Appreciation Week.
Yep.
And then, let's see what this one is.
Just want to say I appreciate using the 2010 model from First Lady.
Yeah.
That was awesome, right?
Yeah.
Thank you for noticing that. Hashtag awesome song. But you do that across platforms, and you can kind of see that the engagement from this photo was up. This was not actually our account at all. I'm sure some of you are maybe a little bit familiar of Exploding Bacon. Yeah, they're awesome, and they really jumped on the first Like a Girl, hashtag Like a Girl campaign, and you can really see some great engagement as a result of that. You also want to make sure when you're getting on a hashtag trend, that you are hashtagging properly, because it doesn't help you at all to engage new users and find a new audience if you're out talking about hashtag OMG Roberts and everybody else is talking about OMG robots.
And that's something that as a mentor or the adult person in charge you can really take the due diligence to figure out like what's going on in some of the hashtags and make sure that if your team is going to develop a new hashtag and hope to get it trending, which would be crazy and awesome, and I would encourage you to try it, that you don't create a hashtag that already exists for something else that may not be so appropriate for a high school or lower robotics STEM competition.
So kind of going back to our best practices, when we're creating content, we always try to think what's going to be based on our mission. We did a series of memes over the summer and into the fall that were kind of things that adults always say to kids that they're not necessarily negative, but we paired it with photos of first teens in a moment to try to be a little ironic. I like this one because it's also a violin song. Sorry. It's also great to tap into what's going on in pop culture. This was just a silly little recreation of the Jurassic World Velociraptor training scene. Have you all seen Jurassic World? Yes. Yeah. We get a little silly with it. And also, it's wonderful when you can have some user-generated content because, not that we're lazy, but you guys sometimes think of things that are more eloquent than we could possibly come up with. And so we use that to our advantage at every opportunity.
It's also time-consuming to make content, so if you can get your users to develop content, that's time that you don't have to spend.
We also have fun with certain holidays, and we love Bill Murray and angry groundhogs. So this is another example of finding a hashtag that people who are involved in STEM are not necessarily, I said that backwards, it's been a long day. People who are unaware of FIRST but are interested in Groundhog Day would find you if you shared something like this because they're searching for Groundhog Day. And who isn't going to be interested in what you're doing when they see Bill Murray in the front seat?
So you definitely want to take, keeping it simple is really important, and that's so stimulating your social media can turn into a time sink, as we were talking about when we were talking about this like meme creation idea. When you look back at some of that user developed content that we had examples of that we've done, the timelines of developing that stuff, it can be long. So you definitely want to keep it simple, and you want to have somebody on your team who is good at making those memes. So you need somebody that can get the photo, write on it, and then make it, maybe somebody else is the quirky person who comes up with the sayings. Yeah, in the back. Yeah, for sure. There's tons of meme creators out there, and you can, developing content can be quick and easy, for sure. So you want to make sure that you're keeping it simple enough that you can do that.
Yeah, we also sometimes just shamelessly borrow other memes, like any Game of Thrones fans out there. That's appropriate. All right, the winter is coming. Come on, everybody knows that, and it's very effective if you've got Stop Bill Day is coming. I think we actually use that one. Sorry. I'm patting myself on the back. The other thing is you want to make sure that when you're creating this stuff, you want to keep it shareable. So you don't want to bog it down with too much information. You'll lose people. Again, you can slightly vary it from platform to platform, of course, but it's always important to make it as easy for people to share it outside your circle.
So you want to, when you're talking about images, you really the engagement when you have an image is incredible, but you got to get the right image size. So this is off a reference of an article that we read recently. So I'm sure you could find the article if you search for it. But these pictures are the sizes that work best in these platforms. So especially when it comes to Twitter, there's many people out there who tweet pictures who get cut off, and they see just like the bottom half of the picture or the middle part of the picture that makes no sense because they can't see the reference to it. So I encourage you to think critically about the picture sizes that you're posting, because getting the right picture and the right image is really important to your engagement levels. So take the time to, especially those of you that are tweeting right from your phones, look and see what the picture is going to be like before you tweet it, so that you're not getting just like the middle part of the picture and everyone else's, like all the heads and all the thumbs up are cut out because they're above what the Twitter feed is going to show. So that's really important, getting your pictures the right size.
Having said that, when you're at a live event and you're going really fast, chances are you're going to mess that up every now and then. First Lego League, I may have done that a few times today, but if you click on the photo, you can see the whole thing. We're not perfect.
And then you want to also think about the character amount because people have like really short attention spans. So this might surprise some of you because we have Facebook actually shorter than Twitter, but right now the recommended length of character for a Facebook post is 90 to 100 characters because after that they're not reading it. Especially if you are like the blogger on Facebook where it says read more because very little of your engaged audience is going to actually read more. So I really encourage you to think about how can you develop content that is going to be readable in a short amount of time, and then you want to get people to click to go to the next page or the next piece of information. Twitter's great because it has the 140 character limit, so it doesn't let you go any further.
And again, it's all about balance. So you want to make sure that you're keeping these best practices in mind, but that doesn't mean that you can't ever break the rules. You just don't want to be constantly breaking the rules right from the start because, again, you won't keep the people you want engaged.
And really, hopefully the message that you take away from this is that you've got to spend the time to make a good campaign all the time. Every day, every moment, you're thinking, what is our social media campaign? What's our vision? What's our mission? And how is it connected? Because there is nothing worse than having content that is old. So when your users go and think, like, I want to go find FRC team this, and there's nothing on your page since 6 months ago, that means that they're just not going to follow you, they're not going to get engaged with you. So really important to spend the time to do it right.
Yes, if your last post was in 2009, maybe it's time to retire that account. So obviously you're all part of teams. You might have somebody who's assigned to handle social media on your team, but it's never a bad idea to spread that work around. Again, somebody could get sick, somebody could go traveling, somebody could fall down a manhole. I don't know where these examples are coming from.
Somebody could graduate.
Thank you, that's a much more pleasant example. Graduate. I'm sorry. Or fall down a manhole after they graduate. Let's just go with that. But even at first headquarters, we sit in a room and we're a big team talking about things. There are some folks who have some really bad ideas, and if you have a team around you who can say, that's a little off the wall, we're going to table that. It's good to have people you can trust who can take the temperature of that mission that you've established for yourself and say, we're going to hold on to that for a year, 2 years, to 6 years, and maybe never do it. And then on the other hand, you obviously already know the power of collective thinking in solving problems for your own programs. It's the same thing with social media. You can have a great idea, and then Jamie could have another fabulous idea that makes it even better, and then Bridget could come up with like the perfect, photo that just perfectly illustrates what you're trying to say to people. Have fun with your team in creating this. Don't make it so much work and take it on entirely yourself that you suck all the fun out of it. It should be fun. So another great thing about involving your team in social media is you can actually use team events to show who you are to the world. We took a couple screenshots of some ways that we've had team engagement with our accounts and have also seen teams using, there's obviously a gajillion, that's a scientific number, examples out there. But we frequently, I think it's about quarterly now, we run Twitter chats. And even just getting involved and answering a couple questions from new teams who've never been to an event. It doesn't take a ton of time. You're establishing yourself as an expert, and you're probably going to engage with some new teams because they're all gathered to talk about that same topic. Talking about your events, your meetings, taking pictures of things that are going on, when you all get together, your outreach efforts, those are all great things that you could be sharing, and they're probably going to mesh really well with the mission that you set for yourself.
And really, this is the message, don't underdo it, because as we said, quiet accounts are not followed accounts, are not engaged accounts.
Yeah. It might seem like a lot of time when we're like, say, write a mission, put together a timeline, plan a calendar, but don't overplan a calendar. In the end, it's going to start becoming a lot more automatic, and if you invest the time, it's going to come back to you in multiples.
So we want to talk a little bit about some analytics that you can find that easily on your Facebook and your Twitter accounts. And so, just so you know, I majored in math in college, so I'm like a super data nerd. So this stuff is really fascinating to me. So for those of you that this may not be as fascinating, you can just turn your ears off for a little bit if you want.
This would be a good time to tweet about how awesome this session is.
Yeah. So this is a snapshot of the screenshot from the FRC Teams page, and you can take a look at just so this is under the insights. So normally when you're going to post something, you're on the page, but then you have these choices as the administrator, and you go to insights, and it gives you all of this information that you can look at. So you can take a look at, I did this on April 19th. So we have actions, and that means somebody like clicked on our video or watched our, they actually went to the website from there. This shows you my largest audience for that time frame. So April 13th to the 19th, I got women 45 to 54 as 20% of my audience. So for some of you might think like, wow, that's interesting. If I had asked you before this presentation who it was, many of you probably wouldn't have put that category first. But look at my mobile devices. 57% came off mobile devices. So these are the things this is the way that you can use information from the analytics page to better engage your audience. So if I have 20% of so who are these women? Probably they're what? Moms. So what kind of information can I start providing on my Facebook page that's going to get the moms even more excited about their students being involved in first teams? So that's what you want to look at as your page. Who's looking at your page, and how can you better engage that group? Or how can you reach out to the group that you're not getting? So maybe you're looking for 18-year-olds between that are interested in video games, and you can try to think about, well, what would I post that might engage that group of people? So there's a lot of, I had 67 video views in this time. There's all kinds of information in here that you can use in the analytics that can help you develop better content over time to either reach different audiences or engage better audiences. So this is my Facebook analytics page, which again, from your page, if you're here, this is where you post. You just click on the insights, and then there's all kinds of other things that if you clicked on each of these, there would be more information that you could get at that time.
The analytics kind of allows you to become an evil genius of content production because you can really start to see who's getting engaged over what and in what time frame, and then cater that content around those audiences.
So this is also from my Twitter account. So we can look at. So we posted this. Here's Team Update 21, which hopefully, obviously, everyone in here read and clicked, right? If you're on an FRC team. Yeah, of course you did. So we can look at link clicks, 163. So you guys took up most of that, so good job. So you can see here what are you getting from your information. So we had this many link clicks, but we had this many impressions, and you can take a look at which of your tweets or how much of your content is really getting you the develop that you want, especially some of these ones down here, because this is probably where you're going to get more of those people that are looking for who you are, how can I get involved, more importantly than my link click is the blog post, so, which obviously people are interested in. And then here is my Twitter analytics for the account for this 28-day period. So you can see here, so Here, so we had a big peak here. So anyone want to take a guess, like what some of these days are? What was I tweeting on those days? Those of you that know what I tweet on a weekly basis. Those are the team updates from the season. So that's when I get the most activity. Those high bars are when we post the team updates. Look at so here is what's happening over lately. So you can see as we got closer to the end of the season, more people got involved in our engagement, which makes sense, right? Like people are starting to get excited about either championship or events that they're going to. And so you can take this information and look at what's successful, what am I doing? And then what days of the week am I getting the most people? And then you can look more about what times are people really reading my Twitter feed. So when should I be tweeting rather than, 3 o'clock in the morning, probably not a good time to tweet. But when when are people looking at Twitter a lot? Probably
2 o'clock in the morning.
At night.
depends on your audience, right? Like a lot of the adults probably are looking at it, like if you live in the city, maybe they're looking at it between 5 and 6 when they're sitting on the train, riding at home, they're commuting, right? Maybe if you live in a more suburban area or a more rural area, people are probably not looking at Twitter at 5 o'clock because what are they doing? Driving. So they're not going to be engaging with you. So you want to think about what are the times of the day, and you can use your analytics to guess that or help guess that and use those times to get more people engaged.
I think it's also helpful sometimes to look at which ones get more engagement and less engagement, and then see from the content that you put out there that has fewer clicks on it, fewer activity based off of it, how is it written? That can sometimes really change how you're communicating with people. If you see that the difference in how you constructed a post is night and day and the engagement shows that, then you might want to change the voice and the tone of what you're doing.
So one of the things that you really want to, it's difficult to run a popular or a successful campaign without scheduling. So if you haven't scheduled yet, get on the schedule train because it's awesome. First of all, it's so alleviating. I do not post on the weekends at home, believe it or not, but I post every day on Facebook. So I schedule my posts ahead of time. So you want to definitely get involved in that. So the way that you do that is here I am, I'm writing a post. This one obviously is going to be very engaging because it says test post. But what you do here is instead of just hitting publish, you hit the down arrow and just choose schedule. And then it will take you to a place where you can pick the date and pick the time, and this is where really you can capitalize on that understanding that I should be posting on Facebook at 7:30 because everyone in my town is bored with television by that time. So. And then if you're not on TweetDeck, I would highly recommend that you get on TweetDeck. So the reason is anybody not on TweetDeck? I don't want to talk to.
What?
Oh, wow. Okay, so quite a few of you.
I think we might need to define what TweetDeck is.
All right, this will blow your mind. So this is a website that you can go to and connect. First of all, connect all your Twitter accounts to, so that's awesome. So you can see here, I've actually 4 accounts connected to my single account, and I can post to all 4 without, all I have to do is just click in the box. So if your team or you personally have several Twitter accounts, this is one of the awesome things about TweetDeck, is that you can tweet to any of your accounts. So from TweetDeck, you can also schedule a tweet. So you just want to go to tweetdeck.com. You can schedule a tweet just like you do on Facebook. So you can just click here and it'll give you a calendar, and you put the day and the time, and then it'll tweet at that time. So we all pre-scheduled content to go out this week, as well as live tweeted from the event. So we knew that there would always be content that was fresh and available, but we didn't have to live tweet it in order for that to happen. Now, I'm not the best tweeter, and probably every single one of you can tell which one I scheduled and which one was live. So a little bit of it you have to sort of get good at faking the excitement of pre-scheduling tweets, but the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. So the other great thing about TweetDeck is that you can develop these columns. So I follow, as my in my role as FRC teams, I follow a lot of hashtags. So I have like 6 or 7 more hashtags that I follow, and then I have also, you can build columns around people that you follow or events that happen. And so here's my OMG Robots column. So any tweet that has OMG Robots as a hashtag shows up in this column. So for those of you that are looking for a way to engage, obviously OMG Robots is one of our main hashtags, so those of you that want to engage just in OMG Robots, you can say, hey, that looks really interesting, I can retweet that really easily because it's right there. So this is the OMG Robots feed, and then here's my first Stronghold feed. So I also have a first champ feed, I have, then whenever anything starts trending that is interesting to me in terms of STEM, I will make a column for that. So when we did the Ask Woody questions, when we did the, when the young man came to school with a clock, I had that as a column, and it was really interesting to watch the tweets come in, so you can see them happen really quickly, and then you can go back and read them. When we ran the first parody contest, anybody take part in the first parody contest? So awesome. And
Thank you.
yeah, it was so fun. It was so fun watching your videos. I had a column for the first parody so that it would I would automatically see when something got tagged with that. So those of you that are thinking, hey, I might run a contest. My team could run a tweet contest. That would be pretty fun. How could I get people more engaged? And a lot of you are thinking, how would I know that somebody was tweeting at me with this content? TweetDeck is a great way to do that because you can just have it feed that particular hashtag. And then, as I said, I have one personally for FRC teams for my suppliers. So anybody that's a first supplier, anytime they tweet, I see them in a feed. So it's a really great way. TweetDeck is a nice way to follow something specific, follow a group of people, and to keep your account organized. So I highly encourage you to get involved. TweetDeck works on your computer. I have never tried the mobile version. I don't know if it even makes sense that it could be a mobile version. So I do this on my computer, but so for those of you that are looking for a really nice and organized way to manage Twitter, TweetDeck will blow your mind and help you think, like, I actually could do this. Jen's gonna talk now.
Okay. So we just wanted to share a couple of examples of content that we created that had really reached outside our usual circles in many cases. A lot of you know that we do share a lot of information about our founder, Dean. Everybody pretty much knows who Dean Kamen is, I think, unless you're living under a rock. He's probably like the most recognizable modern day inventor alive right now. So whenever we share something about Dean, people who haven't necessarily heard about Dean really get excited and involved. We also like to jump on holidays. So you'll see we had some fun with some first Valentines over the last few years. We've been having maybe a little too much fun with April Fools the last few years. People last year actually really believed we were launching a first for pets. Maybe you guys can get on that as a project. And when we go to events, we also typically live tweet from the events. In the past year, we've been to Comic-Con. Yes. We go to a lot of educational conferences now. If we're at a larger event, even if we're a small piece of that event, it's great to share live content from that. And it's something different. So think about the places that you go, the holidays, or the trending topics. All of these things can be made into content for you, and some of them are going to reach far beyond the people that you already know. It's a message worth repeating because if you just talk to yourselves all the time, you're sort of missing the point of having the conversation on an open platform. If you've got closed accounts and you might choose to do that if you want to keep your conversations closed. That might make sense, but if you're looking to reach beyond the people that you already know, it's good to talk about things that the larger world is a little more engaged in, to bring them into your world.
So I think we're like almost at time. How are we doing on slides?
We have 2 more.
Okay.
This is where we really, we have some questions.
Yeah.
Have you all had much success with Snapchat?
So that's a great question. The question was, have you had much success with Snapchat? And we do not have an official account for any of our programs on Snapchat. And we're still trying to it's one of our projects this summer to explore that arena to see if it's something that we're interested in getting involved in. So not yet, but it's something that we're interested in, and I until we really sit down and look at it, it would be another thing that we have to develop content for. So good question. Yeah?
What was the icon? It was orange, had the...
So that's the symbol for an RSS feed. So we use it to represent our blog. Yeah.
Do you use Pages Manager for Facebook for mobile devices? Is it worth it or is it redundant? I find it kind of redundant.
I personally don't use it because I do find it redundant. When I first started with using Facebook, I tried it and I found it. I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm just going to go through my app. So I don't use it. I don't find it helpful for me personally. Yeah.
What kind of posts are best for attracting financial sponsors?
Yeah, I think that it's difficult to say that one post is better than others. I think what you want to think about instead is to think about how can I develop my story so that people want to get engaged with me. Because when you're thinking about financial sponsors, they're looking for an audience. So for example, they want their sticker on your robot, right? They want their name on the back of your shirt. You want to think about your social media campaign is just like that. That means their name is going to be maybe posted on your Facebook page every once in a while or tagged on Twitter. So the only way that those things happen is if you have a story that they're interested in terms of your team development. So I don't think one kind of post is better than others, but rather really think about how can you engage enough people so that they want those people to hear about them.
I think the other side of it too is most of these organizations and corporations have accounts of their own, so you can really get a sense of where their priorities are from the information that they're putting out into the world. I think it's a really great way to see when a company has a really important employee outreach and engagement program. You're going to see that reflected in their social media.
That's a great point.
It's also very good for driving.
I'm just trying to get
toward,
Oh, 1 second.
To the woman's point about using Facebook to fund, it has turned out for our team to be a great way to marry it with crowdfunding.
Yes, that's a great point. And what she said, in case you couldn't hear her, is that it's a great way to use crowdfunding and connect it back through your sponsors and your community supporters to get those processes going. Great point. Go ahead.
Do you use your social media to increase your SEO for your websites?
So in terms of, if you're asking it from a first perspective, we often try to connect them, yes. In terms of your team, that is something that you want to think about sort of as a big picture, because if your website is not great, it doesn't have a lot of great content on it, then you want to be pretty careful about, does that make sense, about shoving traffic there if there's nothing more for them to find out. So that's another big commitment on your part, that if you're going to drive traffic to your website, that means that there has to be stuff on your website that people are going to want to be interested in. So it's something that you have to think about, I think, in the big picture of social media in general. So yes, but not necessarily for everybody. Does anybody else have a question?
We must have just been so thorough.
Or put you to sleep.
I crack myself up. It's a real problem. So part of the whole point of all of this is yeah, you want likes, but ultimately you want the people who are following you to become really as excited about the things that you're doing and the season that you're involved in as you are, and then they're going to become ambassadors for you as well. They're going to start tweeting about you guys. They're going to start sharing stories about you on Facebook. They're going to be Snapchatting. I have to confess, I really haven't used Snapchat other than to like make the dog. So maybe one of you can come see me afterwards. I really like the cat head one. I'm sure there's a ton more to it than that, but if you don't really have the bandwidth to explore, the worst thing you can do is jump into a platform and use it badly.
So we really appreciate you all coming. If you want to, I have to go be on First Champ Live at 7, so I don't have a ton of time. But Jen might be able to hang out and answer questions. But if you do want to ask us, you can. Our emails are on the First website. They're all our first initial and last name at firstinspires.org. Thank you very much.